This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Welcome to the G-Spot Podcast. I'm your guide, Katy Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us for conversations around sex, spirit, and all things self-care. All things self-care. All things self-care.
This is a journey into sound.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro.
You are a G-Spot Podcast with Katy Silcox.
Hey G-Spot listeners, it's Amory. I'm filling in for Katy this week. We have a really special guest on our show today, Dr. Katy Jane. You might know her if you're a member of the Love Fit subscription. She writes a monthly astrology column in our magazine, and she's joining us today to talk about 2021 astrology, big view, eagle eye vision of what the stars are indicating about energies on Earth. So stay tuned. And just a reminder that this is Jyotishi, Vedic astrology, using the sidereal system and placements of the zodiac and the planets, which are the actual location of the stars and planets. If you were to look up at the sky with the Skyview app or NASA's data. So this isn't the Western tropical system, which means if you've been reading that, there might be some zodiac alignments that are different. Welcome, Dr. Katy Jane.
I'm so happy to be with you and all the Shakti School and all the G-Spot listeners.
We're really happy to have you.
Oh.
We've been excited for this episode for a few weeks.
Yay. I think everybody's excited for 2021.
Definitely. Well, let's jump into it. What were when you looked at 2021, what are some of the big themes that you found?
Well, we can't help but look at 2021 in light of 2020, which has been, I've described it as a Guinness World Book of Records astrological year. It's been really, of course, wild as we've seen in our lives. But most specifically, what I saw with 2021 is a more normal year, a normalizing year after a very huge tsunami that swept through all of our lives. And so we have to really contextualize 2021 within the last events of 2020, because we're talking now on the 15th of December, right after the 6th eclipse of 2020. And we have a few more things coming up before the year is over. So we want to understand those things in order to really fully appreciate 2021. But the big event was the last eclipse, and this is something very strange about 2020. In normal years, we only have 4 eclipses, 2 lunar eclipses and 2 solar eclipses. And biorhythmically, we're used to that. The planet is used to that. The things that grow, our growth cycles, our agricultural cycles, our biorhythms. We're used to a 4 eclipse cycle. In 2020, we had 6 eclipses, and the 6th just happened. The last solar eclipse just took place on the 14th of December. And this is, of course, very jarring for our systems because we're not used to 6 dips into this abyss. Every time we go into an eclipse, we get a complete reset. Our hormones reset, our rhythms reset, our emotions reset. It's like a cleanse, kind of. And it can have all that accompanying, ick that comes with cleanses. But 6 relates to something else. The number 6 relates to the 6 chakras. And with 6 eclipses, we can say that on a mass scale, we're experiencing a great ascension spiritually. And this, can take place in many different ways, and it's usually accompanied by great upheaval whenever there's a big spiritual ascension, right? Because people who would not ordinarily be into looking within, prioritizing something unseen like the spirit, would not necessarily turn to this kind of thing unless there was a big upheaval.
Mm.
So this is the first thing, the big eclipse, which is spiritual ascension sounds so nice on paper, but really what it requires is what's going on now at the end of the year. A great cleansing of all that's in the subconscious mind. A great cleansing of the ancestral karma, of all that we've stored away and in that place of deep subconscious awareness. We're not really always aware of this stuff until it becomes a problem. So it can be weird health issues, psychological issues, grief issues. All this is coming out at this time at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the eclipse. And then there is one of the most outrageous winter solstices in our lifetime about ready to take place, which is really the theme for 2021, the joining of Jupiter and Saturn. So 2020 ends and 2021 begins with this great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn together in sidereal Capricorn. In Vedic astrology, there is this conjunction is taking place in Capricorn, in which the 2 planets essentially become one. And
Wow.
this gives a particular kind of yoga. In Vedic astrology, when planets come together, they form a combination, which we call a yoga. And sometimes that combination can be like chocolate sauce and ice cream. It's a nice combination. Or it can be chocolate sauce on asparagus. It's a little bit of an acquired taste. This is chocolate sauce and ice cream. This is a very nice combination. First of all, it gives, like what I said, a yoga, a planetary combination of Saturn and Jupiter, which is called Dharma Karma Adipati Yoga. Dharma Karma. It's because, this is a little techno speak, but it's because these planets each rule the 9th and 10th houses of the natural zodiac. The 9th house is Dharma and the 10th house is Karma. Mm-hmm. So what does this mean? It taking place in the sign of Capricorn, it's like a big reset for the world. A big moment of realignment with Dharma and the work that aligns with that, the work that accompanies that, the karma, the actions. So what is this big realignment? At the same time that Jupiter and Saturn are coming together, Pluto, which we never pay attention to. Like, we don't even think of Pluto as a planet, right? Like, I think it's even been declassified. Yeah. Well, Pluto is very much a planet when he moves signs, which doesn't happen very often. The last time Pluto moved signs was 20 years ago.
Right, and Pluto's often considered the generational planet, right? It rules usually a generation.
It's generational. It's also the Lord of Death. It's exactly it, like the thing we never think about, death. Mm-hmm. It's something we put off until, when it comes, but we're not dealing with it now, Pluto he's like the Grim Reaper. He's like, okay, whatever you put off now, you have to deal with. That's kind of how he shows up. He's He's a 20-year cycle. It takes him about 240 plus years to make a complete circle of the zodiac. But this combination with Jupiter and Saturn in Capricorn and Pluto joining them has not taken place for 800 years.
Wow.
So many like big, movements happening like this hasn't taken place. Like the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction hasn't taken place in the sign of Capricorn since 1960. And of course, you know what happened in 1960. But then we add this Pluto in with it, and it's a big shift on the planet, I mean, it's like one of those evolutionary leaps where we were just yesterday riding in, horse and buggy, and all of a sudden we're in cars. It's that kind of leap. It's just all of a sudden, like, instead of taking a ship over to Europe, we get in a plane and fly.
Right. I have a question. I often think elementally because of my Ayurvedic education. And, Capricorn is an earth sign. And so I'm wondering if, even though, this Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, and Capricorn signifies a leap, is this a more grounded leap because of that earth energy of Capricorn? How will it kind of differ from the 2020 energy, which also felt like a lot of leaps?
2020 was all about fire.
Okay.
And the gap. There's a word in Sanskrit called Gandanta, which means the cavern or the gap, the knot at the end. Mm-hmm. And it was, very much like that scene in Lord of the Rings when Gandalf the Grey gets pulled into the cavern by the dragon. And you think, oh, poor Gandalf is lost. 2021 is Gandalf the White emerging. We've gone through the big fire of transformation. And now the earth gets recreated. And, before this whole pandemic happened, the big news, the big conversation was all about the environment. And Greta, that little girl.
Yeah.
She's really a prophet for the new world that's being created, which is, we've all experienced. I was in India during the moment the pandemic hit and we were all under lockdown. And it was amazing to see how the environment could heal itself, how the butterflies, I saw butterflies for the first time ever in Delhi. The sky was blue. I could see the moon and the stars. And I think that this is what this council of these big planets taking place in Capricorn is really bringing us, is a shift in the way the planet is conducted, the business of the planet. Capricorn is a sign of business. It's the big organizations. Governments, World Health Organizations, United Nations, everything is being reconfigured. And of course the earth, is the player, how we grow our food, how we transport, how we consume. I mean, I think that the pandemic has brought all of this to the fore.
Yeah. So it sounds like more Capricorn, like structural change.
Structural change, who's in power, it's also like 1960 all over again, and the civil rights movement and the correcting of historical wrongs and, equality and new voices and a new spiritual renaissance. 1960 was the dawn of alternative spiritual practices. yoga and meditation and Buddhism and all the gurus hit the US at that time and started a real spiritual renaissance. And that, I think, is upon us. I think that, the millennials and the Gen Zs, especially the Gen Z people, are going to herald a new dawn,
Yeah.
a new spirituality that is really exciting to see what they come up with.
So it sounds like 2021's alignments lend themselves to a more creative restructuring as opposed to 2020 that felt like it was a lot of deconstruction.
Yeah, I mean, 2020 was, of course, a lot of destruction, but there was also a lot of really interesting new businesses and industries and way people work. And, how we survive these things is how we evolve.
Yeah.
So these moments of great destruction are actually, of course, powerful moments of recreation as well. Nothing is all bad. And, just speaking of the theme of 2021, as opposed to 2020, there's an expression, I think it's in Sanskrit, but I don't remember. It's well begun is half done. So how something begins tells us a lot of how, the life of something that begins at that moment is going to unfold. That's why your birth chart is so significant, because that's, the moment you came into life tells us about, the forecast for the entire life. It's the same thing when we look at the start of a year. 2020 started off with the moon, which is the collective mind, how the collective is going to experience. 2020 began with the moon transiting Purva Bhadrapada, a star constellation that's symbolized by a man who wears a mask.
Stop.
So it looked like one thing, but when we went into 2020, you were getting married,
Yeah.
I was getting married. It was all like this fun year ahead, and then boom, man who wears a mask, the other side. The other shoe drops. That's another theme for that star constellation. 2021 begins with the moon in Pushya. And fun that I'm talking, in Katie's podcast, because Katie's a Pushya. Pushya means the milk bestowing udder of the cow, the nourisher, the nurturer, the wheel. It's symbolized by a wheel moving forward, the wheel of progress. So
It's so hopeful sounding.
It's hopeful. I feel really good about 2021. The beginning is a little, of the leftover of 2020. So the first 3 months are a bit of the same. I mean, I think we can expect the same kind of restrictions, the same kind of, maybe, I hate to even say lockdowns, but perhaps, but the mood is different. We're moving forward. By April is, the whole player, I should say, like astrologically, the number one player for 2021 is Jupiter. And Jupiter, goes into these moments of having to negotiate on matters of faith and hope and, vision. We have to be very, very practical. I think that's like the big news.
Okay.
Practicality is important, like not getting, in any dimension of life, not letting yourself get too out there with dreams and visions, but grounding them in something real that can carry you for the next 20 years, because that's what this is about. 20
Is that right? Oh, because of Pluto starting a new cycle.
Because of Pluto
Okay.
starting a new cycle. And this is about dharma and karma, like like starting a new cycle. This is also the wheel of progress, starting a new cycle in your life, in these big areas of life, what you do and what you do it for.
Okay. So Pluto is moving into Capricorn, right? And it will be there for 20 years.
It's going to be there 20 years.
Wow.
And Pluto does really well. And Pluto gets a lot of power in Capricorn.
That's what I was going to ask, if that was an exalted position or more of a neutral sitting place.
Yeah, it's a powerful position for Pluto. Pluto likes Capricorn, as opposed to, other signs. And what I mean by like and dislike, it means that the sign can control the planet. Like the last 20 years, Pluto's been transiting Sagittarius, and the energy of Sag can kind of keep Pluto back.
Okay.
Capricorn, it's like, no, it's big. These are big times for the world. Like the children born now, wow, they're like they're the movers and shakers of the future. They're going to like inherit this really, really transformed world. And who knows even what that is, like what kind of technologies, what kind of innovations. It's really a mind-blowing time.
All right.
Yeah.
So what would you say would be the theme for the first 3 months? I know you mentioned that it would feel similar to 2020 in its energy. I know we have a new moon in, I think, Sagittarius in January. Are there any kind of other interesting transits happening in that first quarter of the year?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I would approach the beginning of the year is like the way that you would approach a Tibetan prayer wheel, to get on the wheel, symbolism, turn the year, like begin it with a big prayer, with a big intention for what you'd like to see carry you through for the next 20 years. But the first 3 months are a little bit, I think, of the same with, the coronavirus, the restrictions, the fear. It happens when these big transits happen because there's so much uncertainty. And, and when planets go into these gap states, it's kind of hard to see. But by April is a really powerful time, April into May. First of all, Jupiter is going to move his position into Aquarius, which is a little bit better. It means it brings new technologies, new healing technologies. I think that that we'll have a lot of success in combating the virus with really breakthrough medical technologies, and that those technologies may have implications for other diseases that we never even thought of, that this could be some really big breakthroughs for the world beginning around April 6th, when Jupiter moves. And then we begin the eclipse cycle in May. I believe May 26th is the first lunar eclipse of 2021. And May, things start to really, really improve. Yeah, May 26th is the first lunar eclipse. And then the solar eclipse, the first one is June 10th. Okay. So spring and summer, I really think we're going to have a big sigh of relief. Things are going to feel more like normal. There will be some hope of this stuff being behind us, but more in its place. Like, I think a better way to look at things, rather than, okay, when is this going to be behind us, is what's going to come out of it. What kind of interesting new world are we going to see birthed from all this turmoil and disruption.
Mm-hmm.
That's really exciting to see.
Yeah. And so that starts in May with the eclipses. And
Yep. And it's a more normal eclipse cycle. So it's not, I don't see anything like in 2020, there were so many things happening that were just like, wild. Like I said, the Guinness World Book of Records of astrological years. 2021 is like, okay, it's move ahead time.
yeah.
And, and reinvent if you've lost. And even if you haven't, it's a good time to think about new directions.
Brilliant. And I know that Mercury tends to go retrograde that time of year. It goes retrograde twice a year, right? Is there anything in particular about this retrograde? I think it happens in May or June.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different reset, it may be like, some with Mercury retrograde, it always affects the news media and things like that. It may be some things get uncovered that, we didn't realize and now we're being told. Who knows what that's going to be. But, the thing about Mercury going retrograde is it's short times.
Yeah.
These big movements are really momentous. The short-term stuff we can handle. It's the big ones that are like, okay, now I have to shift my life a bit,
Yeah.
So
Brilliant. So that brings us into the summer. Is there anything else in that summer period that looks interesting or could be a pointer for us to gaze at?
Summer is, I think, actually like the beginning of the year. Like, I think that eclipse that takes place, that's going to be the first eclipse after this big one that's taken place just yesterday. And you can look at the year as moments in between eclipses because they usually set the tone. So the tone has now been set from the 14th of December until the 26th of May when we have our first eclipse.
Interesting.
It's really, this period is about cleaning up the past, going back over the last 20 years and seeing, okay, what did I learn? What have I accomplished? What have I gained? What do I need to let go of? How do I need to settle myself with that period of life that I've just passed through? That's what this time is. And then really May is when the year begins.
I love that. I love that. And I really resonate with that. I know a lot of people on our team and in our community have, because it felt like this new moon that just happened felt more like a full moon because of the eclipse. It just felt like there was a lot of processing happening and vivid dreaming and racing thoughts. It's that subconscious coming up.
Yeah, and it involves like really, it took place in the 8th sign of the natural zodiac, in the sign of Scorpio, which relates to the deep, dark, hidden aspects of ourselves. The 8, the number 8, but it's also where all of our power lies. This is the time, especially with Jupiter going into a more debilitated state with Saturn. This is the time to put what you practice into practice, what you believe, what you preach, what you, have held on to as your ideals. They really need to be applied practically. That's the calling of the time. Platitudes are no longer a luxury that we can rest on. We have to be very pragmatic in how we apply our gifts and talents. And we have to apply our gifts and talents. This is the other really big message of this movement, is that it's no longer an option just to sit on the fence and talk about someday. When Pluto moves, someday is today.
Okay.
It's arrived.
I love that. I'm a woman of action.
You are.
I am.
And short emails. I love it. Once.
Yeah. So what else do you have for us? What piqued your interest in 2021?
You know, just what really has piqued my interest in 2021 are the repeats of certain like really pivotal times in history. This is what astrologers do, you know, when we see patterns repeating in the sky, especially big patterns like this.
Mm-hmm.
We go back into history to see what happened, to be able to kind of understand what might transpire now. And, you know, the last time that we had a big Saturn, Pluto kind of configuration was 1914, the start of World War I. 1947 and the partition of India and Pakistan and the creation of the State of Israel. 1982, the start of the AIDS pandemic. AIDS, what do you call it? Pandemic, but it's something else. There's another word.
Epidemic, maybe.
Epidemic, that's
Yeah.
you know, so these are really heavy times, but they're also, you know, I've been reading this fascinating book, which I really recommend to the listeners at the Ghee Spot. It's a biography, a new biography on the life of Indra Devi. It's called The Goddess Pose. And Indra Devi, of course, is this huge figure in terms of importing yoga to the West. She's one of the founding people. She was called the First Lady of Yoga. So I've been reading her book, and she lived during all of these times. And it's so interesting because we see, you know, yes, when we talk about World War I and 1947, 1982, these are not like the cheeriest moments in world history, but they were also profound moments for the waking up of consciousness.
Yeah.
The embrace of yoga in the West, the embrace of meditation was huge at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So we never have moments with big transitions like this, moments of world turmoil without, I think, a big waking up. And as spiritual people, we should be focusing more on that. We should be contributing more to that, in my opinion, than the scary, fearful things that we're told by the news.
Yeah.
And other agents like that.
That makes me think of something Katy has said a few times in Ayurveda school, and that is that Tantra lives in the paradox. And what we're doing in a lot of mysticism, perennial philosophies, is leaning into these paradoxes of life and into these somewhat like opposing ideas. And it feels like the energy of the last few years was about everyone sticking to their camps and getting in their categories. And there was a lot of categorization and identification. And my hope is that we'll be able to now lean into some of the paradoxes of those identities and where we have overlap, and, you know, be in that uncomfortable middle where you can hold two things true at the same time. Because that's where the transformation seems to happen. Yep.
It's necessary. I mean, we have to be in order to move forward. Yeah, I mean, I was so inspired to read about the life of Indra Devi and how like all these intense things were happening in the world. Like, you know, she grew up in Russia during the time of the last Tsar, and she was there during the Russian Revolution. She was there during, you know, the whole World War II and all the issues surrounding that, and went to Vietnam to teach people yoga during the Vietnam War in Vietnam. I mean, like just she took that time in the world to share something that everybody needed. And I think we're at the same place. And so many people have stepped up and learned new technologies, Zoom, everything, to reach people. And it's so important.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And what do you see, like, if 2021 is the Kickstarter of this new generation, are there any like big themes where you see that going past 2021?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, indeed. Yes, because I mean, this is whenever we have this kind of powerful configuration, it launches a new generational movement, like you said, and it's a new generational movement that's upon us. And yeah, I mean, the hard thing about change, and especially with planetary transits like this, is that they're always tough in the beginning.
Yes.
You know, the first 2 years are tough. By 2022, things are really going to start to take shape. We'll have a real clear sense of what the new world looks like post-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's anything to fear. I think fear is, really overrated.
Yes, I think so too. This is a time to be brave and curious.
Brave
And
and curious and hopeful and going for it full throttle.
Yeah, lovely. So if the beginning of the year is really in May, Jupiter, then what is sort of the theme for this back half of 2021?
The first half?
The back half of 2021. If the start of the year is with these eclipses in May, June.
I think that we'll be able to come out from our imprisonments. I think we'll be able to move again and travel again and interact. Mm-hmm. I think that the worst will be over in terms of the isolation, and because it's been so long since people have been able to connect, I think it's going to be a real summer of love.
Brilliant. Good. We need that.
It's definitely something to focus on. I mean, I always tell people I don't have my ear pressed against the wall of God's office, and I don't, no astrologer does, but we can put our attention, this is where our free will lies, we can put our attention on the best possible outcome. And I think the best possible outcome is to imagine a very, very fun summer ahead with friends and warmth and, this being behind us.
Yeah. And for somebody who considers themselves a mystic, and what are the spiritual themes that they can keep in their hearts as we move through the back half of 2021? With us coming out, I'm wondering if the planets have a theme to them during this time of like where we should be pointing our energy towards to make the best use of this new energy.
Really the best use of all of this is service, being of service, however you can help. That's the best attitude to have. How can I help? How can I serve? How can I apply my spirituality in a way that is practical and beneficial? This is the nature, the energy of Capricorn. This is a Capricorn-esque year. And it begins with, like I said, the moon with Pushya in the nurturer, in the sign of the mother. It's really a time of the practical expression of what we, may have held as a kind of luxury in our life. It's no longer a luxury. It's actually a necessity to give and to share it, whatever it is that you do.
Yeah. And a lot of us have had so much time to think about what our values are this year and how they might have changed while we were in lockdown and while we did a lot of introspection and learned things about ourselves. And we can now start to bring that forward.
Yep. And I think one of the biggest things that people have learned, and I see it, in distanced interactions with people, is that the world is my family, that we're all connected. I feel like, just taking walks and encountering people. In the past, I may have just been, more brusque. I might not have made eye contact. Now, when I see another human, I'm like, oh my God, hello, hi. I'm so happy to see you. There's like so much joy in connecting now. I think all of us appreciate that so much. And that kindness has really increased as a result of all this isolation. People really feel, so much more connected and so much more loving toward one another because of all that we've gone through collectively.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, this feels like a real brush of fresh air.
Good. I hope so. Collectively, we should all think of that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Katy, for sharing your insights with us.
Me on, and lovely to connect with all of you guys as well. Hope you have a wonderful new year.
You too. And, for our listeners, you can read Dr. Katy Jane has monthly Vedic Astrology Insights in our Love Fit magazine every month, which you can read. And I'm wondering, Katy, I know your calendar was closed for a while. Are you currently taking new signups for readings?
I will in January. I will take appointments. I've started a new Instagram account called Rising Star Astrology, and I'll be posting updates and more astro news there. I'm getting ready to write a book. So I've got a lot going on this next year. So appointments I have available, but grab them when you can.
Yes, exactly. I know I will be.
As many as I can accommodate.
Yeah, and so I'll link to your new Instagram account in the show notes, and then you also have some online courses, right? Where can we find your courses online?
You can go to my website, drkatyjane.com, KatyJane.com, drkatyjane.com. And I will have my new Vedic astrology training program available beginning of the year 2021, January.
That's really exciting.
All together. Yeah, I mean, it's time. We need more healers. We need more light workers. That's why I love Shakti school. It's so important that people follow their impulse if they feel they've got something in them to share. The world really needs it. More light workers, more healers, for sure.
Yeah, I'm actually really interested in studying Jyotish because one Vedic astrologer told me I think I had 2 or 3 indications for Vedic astrology in my chart.
I totally see you do it. And they're sister sciences, Ayurveda and Jyotisha. They go together, just like the mind and the body. Jyotisha is the mind and Ayurveda is the body. They're together, joint twins.
Great.
Well,
thank you so much. And we look forward to checking in with you again soon.
Yay. Thanks so much.
फूटे फूल पूर्ण सुखे फूटे फूल